I scoffed when a fortune teller warned me not to go home, that a shadow had fallen over my door. But then I saw the terrifying truth in my husband's empty eyes as he ushered me inside. The scent of kettle corn and autumn leaves hung heavy in the air, a perfect Saturday cocktail. I was juggling a bag of Honeycrisp apples and trying to decide between a jar of artisanal jam and a loaf of sourdough when a hand, surprisingly strong and cool, closed around my wrist. I flinched, nearly dropping the apples. An old woman stood before me, her face a road map of wrinkles and her eyes, dark and piercing, seeming to look right through me, past the fleece jacket and the carefully constructed contentment of my life. She was hunched over a small, rickety table laden with tarot cards and strange polished stones, a stall I'd passed 100 times and always ignored. "Don't go home," she rasped, her voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Her grip tightened. "Trouble awaits you there. A shadow has fallen over your door." I blinked, trying to pull my arm away gently. "I'm sorry. I'm not interested," I stammered, my cheeks flushing. People were starting to glance our way. This was exactly the kind of scene I avoided. I'm a creature of habit, of logic. I believe in spreadsheets and scheduled maintenance, not shadows and cryptic warnings from strangers. "The key you think keeps you safe is the very thing that locks you in," she continued, her eyes boring into mine. "The face you trust hides a serpent smile. Do not go home. Go anywhere else. A friend's house, a hotel, but do not cross your own threshold tonight." Her intensity was unnerving. A genuine cold knot of fear was beginning to form in my stomach, pushing aside my rational skepticism. Her words felt specific, not some generic, "a tall, dark stranger will enter your life" nonsense. A shadow over my door, a face I trust. The knot in my stomach tightened into a cold, hard stone. "Honey, what's going on here?" The voice, deep and familiar, cut through the tension like a warm knife. "Mark, my husband." He appeared at my side, one arm sliding possessively around my waist, his other hand gently disengaging the old woman's grip from my wrist. He was smiling his easy, charming smile, the one that had won me over a decade ago. But today, seeing it directed at the old woman, it looked less charming and more like a warning. "Is this woman bothering you?" he asked, his tone light, but his eyes were fixed on her with a sudden, flinty hardness I rarely saw. The fortune teller didn't flinch. She simply held his gaze, a flicker of something unreadable in her dark eyes. Then she looked back at me, one last desperate plea in her expression. "Heed me," she whispered so softly only I could hear. Mark chuckled, a dismissive sound. "Come on, Sarah. Let's not waste our time with this nonsense." He guided me away from the stall, his hand firm on the small of my back. "Probably just trying to squeeze a few bucks out of you. You know how they are." I glanced over my shoulder, but the woman and her rickety table were already being swallowed by the bustling crowd. It was as if she'd never been there at all. The entire encounter felt like a strange, feverish dream. "What did she say to you?" Mark asked as we walked towards the car, his voice back to its usual cheerful cadence. "Nothing," I lied, not sure why. "Just the usual. Something about a long life and a surprise inheritance." He squeezed my shoulder. "Well, I could do with a surprise inheritance. Maybe we should have given her $5. He laughed, and I forced a weak smile in return. The cold stone in my stomach, however, remained. The car ride home was strangely quiet. Mark chattered on about his week, a stressful project at his architecture firm, a funny email from his brother. I nodded and made the right noises, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the woman's words over and over. A shadow has fallen over your door. The face you trust hides a serpent's smile. It was ridiculous. Utterly, completely ridiculous. Mark was the least serpentine person I knew. He was stable. He was kind. He was my rock. "You're quiet," he noted, glancing over at me as we turned onto our street. "You sure that old bat didn't spook you?" "No, I'm fine. Just tired," I said. He reached over and patted my knee. "Well, we're almost home. We can just relax, order a pizza, and watch that new series you wanted to see. Sound good?" "Perfect," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. As we pulled into our driveway, everything looked exactly as it should. The perfectly manicured lawn, the cheerful yellow mums I'd planted by the porch, the familiar oak tree standing guard. My rational brain screamed at me that I was being a fool, letting a street performer's theatrics get under my skin. I took a deep breath, ready to laugh it all off, to step out of the car and back into my normal, predictable life. But then I saw it. It was a small detail, something anyone else would miss. But I wouldn't, because I was the one who locked it every single morning, who checked it twice out of habit. The front door, our heavy, dark blue front door, was slightly ajar. Just a crack, a sliver of blackness against the afternoon sun, my breath caught in my throat. I turned to Mark, my eyes wide with a sudden, primal fear. But he wasn't looking at the door. He was looking at me. And he wasn't smiling anymore. His expression was completely blank, his eyes cold and empty. He killed the engine, the sudden silence deafening. "It's all right, Sarah," he said, his voice unnervingly calm. "Just stay in the car. I'll take care of it." Stay in the car. His voice was flat, devoid of the warmth I'd known for 10 years. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. My hand was frozen on the door handle, my brain short-circuiting. An open door meant a break-in. A break-in meant fear, panic, a call to 911. But Mark wasn't panicking. He moved with a calm, deliberate purpose that was far more terrifying than any frantic reaction would have been. He got out of the car, shutting the driver's side door with a soft, final-sounding click. He didn't look back at me. His gaze was fixed on the house, on that sliver of darkness. He walked up the stone path, his steps even and unhurried. He didn't pull out his phone. He didn't shout, "Is anyone in there?" He simply reached the door, pushed it open wider, and stepped inside, disappearing into the shadows of our home. The door swung gently behind him, not closing completely, but leaving just a crack, like a malevolent wink. I sat there, paralyzed, the bag of Honeycrisp apples on my lap suddenly feeling like a bag of stones. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. Trouble awaits. A shadow has fallen. The face you trust hides a serpent's smile. The old woman's words were no longer a silly superstition. They were a prophecy unfolding in real time. My rational mind was desperately trying to supply explanations. Maybe he saw something I didn't. Maybe he thinks it's a friend playing a prank. Maybe, but none of it fit. Nothing explained the cold, dead look in his eyes. Nothing explained his absolute lack of fear. Minutes crawled by. The silence from the house was a living, breathing thing, pressing in on the car windows. Why wasn't he calling for me? Why wasn't he calling the police? What was he taking care of? The questions spiraled in my mind, each one darker than the last. I imagined an intruder, a violent struggle. But there were no sounds of a fight, no shouts, no crashes, no screams, just silence, an awful expectant hush. Then I heard it, a faint rhythmic scraping sound. Scrape, pause, scrape. It was coming from the back of the house near his study. It was a sound I'd heard before when he was dragging the heavy oak coffee table to vacuum underneath. My blood ran cold. I couldn't stay in the car. I couldn't be the waiting wife in a horror movie. My fingers, trembling, finally found the lock. The click echoed in the quiet car. I grabbed my phone, my thumb hovering over the emergency call button. Slipping out of the car, I left the door open, a silent testament to my flight instinct. I crept across the lawn, the damp grass silencing my footsteps. The air inside the house felt thick, heavy with a strange metallic tang that tickled the back of my throat. It smelled faintly of bleach, overpowering the usual scent of lemon polish and old books. The entryway was pristine. Too pristine. The welcome mat was perfectly straight, the hardwood floors gleaming. There was no sign of a struggle, no overturned furniture, no muddy footprints. It was unnervingly normal. The scraping sound had stopped. The house was silent again. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Following the ghost of the sound, I moved stealthily down the hall toward Mark's study. The door was almost closed, a thin vertical line of light escaping from within. I held my breath, pressing my ear against the cool wood. At first, there was nothing. Then I heard his voice. It was low, controlled, completely different from the voice he used with me. It was the voice of a stranger. "No, it's done," he was saying. There were no complications. A pause. I could hear the faint, tinny squawk of someone on the other end of the line. "She didn't see anything," Mark continued, his voice dropping even lower, laced with something that sounded like cold amusement. "She's waiting in the car, just like I told her to. Perfectly obedient. She has no idea." Another pause. My world tilted on its axis. "She has no idea." He was talking about me. "Don't worry," he said, and the finality in his tone chilled me to the bone. "By the time anyone finds him, we'll be long gone, and she'll be the perfect grieving widow." Grieving widow. The word slammed into me, sucking the air from my lungs. It wasn't a stranger in the house. It wasn't an intruder. It was a body. Him. Someone Mark had killed. The bleach smell, the scraping sound of something heavy being dragged. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. My knees felt weak, and I pressed my back against the wall to keep from collapsing. The man I had loved, the man I had built a life with, was a monster. The gypsy's warning wasn't a vague premonition. It was a literal, life-saving instruction. The face I trusted was a serpent's mask. My survival instinct, raw and powerful, screamed at me to run. Get out of the house. Get in the car and drive until the tires melted. But where would I go? He had my phone. My wallet was in my purse on the passenger seat. He knew my friends, my family. He had a plan that involved me playing a part, the perfect grieving widow. And if I deviated from that script, the cold amusement in his voice told me everything I needed to know about what would happen. I couldn't run. Not yet. I needed leverage. I needed proof. My eyes darted around the hallway, landing on the small decorative table by the stairs where we kept a spare car key in a ceramic bowl. It was my only chance. My fingers, numb and clumsy, fumbled in the bowl, closing around the cool metal. As I did, Mark's voice came again from the study, closer this time, as if he was walking towards the door. "I'll call you back when I've handled the final detail." The final detail. Me. Panic gave me speed. I didn't run towards the front door. He'd see me. Instead, I darted in the opposite direction, towards the kitchen and the back door that led to the garage. I slipped through it, My breath held tight in my chest and pulled the door silently shut behind me. The garage was my only hope. It connected to the house, but it had its own exit. I pressed the button on the spare key fob. The soft thump of the car unlocking was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I didn't dare open the garage door. The noise would give me away instantly. My only escape was back out the kitchen door, around the side of the house, and into the waiting car. Just as my hand touched the doorknob leading back into the kitchen, I heard the study door open. Footsteps echoed in the hall. He was coming. There was no time. I ducked down behind our large recycling bins, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. The kitchen door creaked open. Mark stood silhouetted against the light from the house. "Sarah?" he called out, his voice returning to that familiar, loving tone. It was a performance, a chilling piece of theater. "Honey, you can come in now. It was just a squirrel that got in through the chimney. Scared the life out of me, but I chased him out." He took a step into the garage, his eyes scanning the shadows. He was so close I could smell the faint, acrid scent of bleach clinging to his clothes. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't see me huddled in the dark. "Sarah?" he called again, a new edge to his voice. The friendly mask was slipping. He knew I wasn't in the house. He knew something was wrong. His gaze swept past my hiding spot and fell on the car, and he must have seen it. A tiny detail, just like the front door. The driver's side door, which I had left open in my haste, was now closed. I'd shut it from the outside without thinking. His body went rigid. He knew I'd been back. That was my chance. While his focus was on the car, I bolted. I scrambled out from behind the bins and sprinted out of the open garage door, my feet pounding on the asphalt of the driveway. I heard him shout my name, a roar of pure fury, no longer pretending. I didn't look back. I wrenched the car door open, threw myself inside, and jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life just as his hand slammed against the driver's side window. I stomped on the gas. The tires screamed as I peeled out of the driveway in reverse, the car fishtailing wildly. Mark lunged for the door handle, but I was already gone, rocketing down the quiet suburban street. In the rearview mirror, I saw his figure shrink, a silhouette of rage against the backdrop of our perfect, deadly home. I didn't stop driving until I saw the flashing lights of a police station. I stumbled inside, babbling hysterically about my husband, a body, and a fortune teller at a farmer's market. I must have sounded insane, but the terror in my eyes was real enough. They found him, of course. Tucked away in the crawl space beneath the study was Mark's business partner, the man from the stressful project at work. It turned out my husband had been embezzling for years, and his partner had finally figured it out. Mark's plan was simple: kill his partner, hide the body, and then use me as his alibi before he disappeared. He had orchestrated the whole thing, down to leaving the door ajar to create a burglary scenario. He never counted on a nosy old woman with piercing eyes, or on me finally listening to that knot of fear in my stomach. I never saw that gypsy again. I went back to the market a few times, but her stall was gone, as if it had only ever existed for that one moment for me. Sometimes I think I imagined her, but then I remember her grip on my wrist, the urgency in her voice, and the simple chilling words that severed my life into a before and an after. "Don't go home," she'd said. "Trouble awaits." She had no idea how right she was. She didn't just save me from trouble. She saved me from the man I thought I knew, and the perfectly curated lie that was supposed to be my grave.